Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Last year I switched from my Z-Pax Ultraplex to the Durston X-Mid Pro 1, and I made a video about that, which I'll link in the description. All the things I said in that video still hold true for me, and this year Durston Gear released a 2024 update to the original Pro 1. The update includes a version with a DCF floor, and according to their website, a variety of refinements. I agreed to sell my original X-Mid Pro 1 and purchased the 2024 version. The sale of the original version is to one of my sons, so I still have both tents around to do a comparison. As we chat, you can see me setting up the new one in my backyard, which is basically 2 inches of topsoil on top of a rock shelf, so it takes quite a bit of trial and error and pounding to get the tent stakes in. The main selling point of the new version is the DCF floor, which drops the weight by 1.6 ounces or 45 grams. That may seem like a trifling amount, but my base weight has gone up because of supplies and prescriptions I have to carry for a medical condition, so I'm looking for any ways to trim it back down in other areas. Plus, I just wanted the latest version. I plunked down $639 plus $20 shipping, and within a few days the tent showed up. I see that now the pricing has gone up to $654 plus shipping for the DCF version, but when I made my purchase it was only $40 above what I paid the first time. That seemed like an extremely reasonable difference given how expensive DCF is. The 2024 version is also available with the sill nylon floor, and that's going for $564, which is a $35 drop from what I paid for the 2023 version. Big kudos to Dan for managing to lower prices at a time when prices seem to only be going up everywhere. The tent itself isn't substantially different. Here are my thoughts as I went around and compared everything I could between the two tents. I'm including my gripes from using the tent over the past year, things which I hoped would have been addressed and whether they have been or not. I also reached out to Dan Durston about what exactly the variety of refinements are. Since the tent is his creation, he would know, and I'll cover his response at the end of the video.
So as you can see from the outside, you honestly really can't tell the tents apart. This is the older one here on the left, newer one here on the right. I think possibly the newer one has a very slightly lighter shade of green on the DCF, but I'm not a designer, so I couldn't say. Aside from that, identical. But we know this is the older one because on a previous video I showed you how that got a little tear in it on a campsite with a piece of metal, so at least I can always tell them apart. One of the things I wish had been changed that wasn't, I had heard Dan Durston say at some point that he was going to change out these pieces of shock cord for static line on the ends of the tent. That hasn't been done, but I wish it had been, because it would make it better for staking out there on the end if it had a static line with an adjuster, or even just a static loop. So I may just change that out myself. I'd also heard that the magnets that hold the outside fly had been made stronger, possibly slightly, but can't really tell and probably wouldn't have known if somebody hadn't said it. Frustrating thing about these magnets, even though they're super cool, is that if your piece of tape gets twisted around, then obviously they don't work. That's a property of magnets, but it's something that is never a problem with toggles. And so sometimes in the middle of the night, if you're fumbling around in the dark, the little piece of tape here gets twisted around and then you can't get it done up, and you twist it the wrong way to untwist it. And so it can be a little bit frustrating using the magnets, even though in daylight they're pretty cool getting in and out with a lot less trouble. This is the magnet on the old one. Really honestly cannot tell any difference. Another thing I'd heard said was that these little sticks, I don't know what they're made of, these little sticks that hold out the vents on the top had been strengthened. Honestly, I can't tell the difference. And I'd also heard that perhaps the Velcro patch had been made bigger. Can't do this with one hand either. But I can't see any difference. This is the new one, and I'll show you the old one. seems exactly the same. Same material, same size Velcro patch, same. Oh, I managed to do it with one hand. Look at that. Moving on to the inside. The zippers are still one-handed operation, which is a fantastic feature of this tent. Inside and outside, both can be opened with one hand. And then inside we see the main upgrade of the 2024 version that I purchased, which is the DCF bathtub floor. And that's what cuts off the 1.5 ounces or so. Just the difference between the floors. You're going to have a bit more crinkly noise obviously on a DCF floor. So if you're a sleeper who doesn't like the crinkling noise, put a pad on it or get the nylon floor. This is the inside of the old tent with poly nylon floor. Obviously that's going to be quieter, and there is still no problem with it wetting out, as you can see in the first video that I did in my initial review of this particular tent last year when I got it. Everything else inside here seems the same. Pockets seem the same. Peaks. Bathtub floor tensioners. Everything seems pretty much identical. On the inside, another thing that I wish had been changed that hasn't been is this little tie up here for the mosquito net. That can't be done with one hand. I wish it had been replaced with a tiny little toggle, but it's still something where you have to use two hands to tie that up. I had wished that the pockets could be a little lower, but they're exactly the same height in the new version as in the old version. This is partly a little criticism of the tent and partly of the Durston tent pole, which is what I'm using here to supplement my one trekking pole. The shock cord that the end of the pole goes into to keep it tight onto the bathtub floor needs to have a little grommet in it or something, so that the pole, which is very slim, doesn't just go all the way through it. Because what happens at night, and you can see it's starting to happen here even with just having been pitched for 5 minutes, is that the stake will work its way, the pole will work its way down into the ground, and in the morning you'll find that your ridgeline has sagged and the pitch is no longer very good, and that makes it worse in the storm as well, because you've lost the stability. Trekking poles themselves work fine because, as you can see, they're fatter and they don't go down through the shock cord, so you don't get the same collapse in the night when you're in moist ground with the end of it sinking down into the ground and pulling the tent down with it. So it needs to have a little grommet or something, or the Z-Flex tent poles need to have something on them similar to this to prevent them falling all the way through the shock cord. Here they are again after the whole procedure. I didn't work particularly hard to pack them down tightly, but you can see that the 2023 version with the sill nylon floor does pack down slightly smaller than the 2024 version with the DCF floor. Really not much in it though, and either one can lie crosswise in a 30-litre backpack.
After I had finished my own analysis, I asked Dan Durston about the refinements. He told me they are the following. He improved the pitch of the floor so that it would sit flatter with the poles perfectly vertical, rather than having to move the tips to the right. He adjusted the shape of the fly slightly so it should pitch tighter across the top, of course depending also on other pitch factors like terrain and angles of the layout. He adjusted the sewing at the 2 vestibule corners to make them stronger. He changed the line lock tensioners at the 4 corners to ones which operate more smoothly. He added reinforcements at the pole tip connectors so that they would be less likely to tear off if yanked upon. None of these things had been a problem for me, and even after he told me about them, I couldn't see any difference. but tighter, flatter, stronger and smoother all sound like incremental improvements. In conclusion, there is no need to upgrade unless you want to save the weight or are worried that the sill nylon floor might not be waterproof. In my review of the original version, I left the sill nylon floor sitting in a pool of water overnight and it didn't wet through. However, if you want absolute peace of mind that your floor will never wet through, then the DCF version provides that, and saves you some weight for not very much more money than the original version. If you're happy with the sill nylon floor, then there's really no benefit to upgrading to the 2024 version. Overall, the Durston X-Mid Pro 1 is still my tint of choice, and I can't recommend it highly enough. If you find any benefit in this kind of content, please go ahead and drop me a comment and subscribe to the channel. I'd appreciate it very much, and I'll catch you on the next one.